I've actually never done this before. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If everybody could please have a seat and refrain from conversation right now.
All right, meeting started, guys. Pay attention, please.
Okay, so first of all, welcome to our second meeting of the week. We hope as much as you that kind of schedule doesn't have to continue, but we certainly will continue to address issues, and we'll have meetings as often as required to keep communities adequately represented by the board. We're going to start out the meeting tonight with... Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see it on the agenda. Okay.
So, President,
Andy.
and Vice President, present, and Treasurer, present, and the Secretary is present, and Cheryl, present, and Alice is absent.
Alice is visiting family in Washington. So, our last meeting on Sunday had a lot of very wonderful and impassioned conversation from a lot of people about an unresolved situation at the end of Leilani Street. And it was very much directed and requested of the board that we don't sit on it and that we get it resolved to the best of the abilities quickly. So there was a meeting set up with the stakeholders for 2 o'clock the following afternoon in this room. And everyone who was on island, as far as I know, and was of the folks who were affected at the bottom of the llama, and also the folks who were the non-Leilani residents, although back end was also asking for the to come to some kind of resolution. And I'm pleased to say that those people amongst themselves, with no guidance from us, with no, simply what we gave them was chairs and a table. And those people all together worked it out. It took 2.5 hours of genuine reflection and respect and listening. But at the end of it, they called us in and they said, we've got it. We have an arrangement that we feel good about. And the actual involvement of the Leilani Communities Association in the agreement is almost negligible. I did submit it to our attorney, and our attorney said, he had one word only, he said, congratulations. So I would like the folks who are going to be party to this agreement to get together, and right here at the board meeting, there's going to be a signing of the agreement between the folks at the bottom of the llama who were concerned for the things that they were concerned for, and the folks who needed access for the things that they were concerned for. And with that said, anyone here at Leilani Estates can chime in on this, but we felt that it was appropriate to go ahead with the people who were really the affected people. So first of all, before we asked them to come up and sign the agreement, is there anyone here who would like to say anything more about it?
Yeah, well, I wasn't part of the agreement, and we did end up saying concerned Leilani residents, so if there's anybody else here that's concerned.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, exactly.
Signing.
Thank you. Originally, the agreement was worded concerned Leilani Street residents. It was changed to say concerned Leilani residents. So, why don't you guys bring up the documents and let's get them signed right here at the board meeting.
Can you give us a scope of what the agreement says?
You bet these guys are going to read it to you.
Right.
So, Matt Edwards was involved, Mark Figley was involved, Nicolette Reeves was involved, Dee, I don't know your last name.
Daly.
Dee Daly was involved, And there are other folks who already signed it because they were absent. But Matt, would you read the agreement?
Yeah, hi, Mac Edwards, Leilani resident. This is the agreement that was reached. Agreement between Lock residents and concerned LCA residents defined by signature on this document. This agreement will terminate 2 years from the date of signing. This agreement will be extended for 1 year if for reasons beyond the control of the signatories to this agreement's permanent access cannot be established. Additional 1-year extensions may be applied for the same reasons by mutual agreement. Upon termination of this agreement, access to this temporary driveway will be removed and made inaccessible to vehicle traffic. Each TMK involved in this agreement that is not a member of the Leilani Community Association will pay an annual donation to the LCA in the amount of the current LCA Member Association fee. There will be a locked gate at the end of Leilani Street, which only residents of listed Lava Lock TMKs, the LCA board, and fire and police will have a key to. This gate will not be on LCA property. Residents of TMKs listed and their guests will not park along Leilani Street and will respect Leilani Street residents' privacy. Residents of TMKs listed agree not to engage in any commercial tourist activities that would involve use of this temporary driveway. Residents of TMKs listed will be responsible for the temporary driveway and gate maintenance. Signatories of this agreement will revisit the agreement in 3 months after signing of this agreement in order to express areas of concern and modify agreement if needed. This agreement will be revisited after 6 months thereafter. During any point of the life of this agreement, any persons involved can contact Nicolette Dubras at any time to resolve issues related to the temporary driveway access. Residents of TMKs listed ensure that the contractors will grade the inundated portion of Leilani Street back to its original asphalt pavement grade to a point 10 feet beyond 13-743 Leilani Street driveway. If damage is done to Leilani Street by the construction of this project, the listed TMKs will be responsible for repair. In the event of dispute, the parties involved are required to resolve issues by mediation. The listed TMKs will continue to work with the LCA and its members to ensure that everything mentioned above is adhered to properly. Mahalo, Mac Edwards, Deanna Bailey, Gene Thomas, George Dubras, Stephanie Dubras, Nicolette Dubras, Sophia Dubras, John Dubras, Ariel Dubras, and Robert Kochi. Thank you. So I guess I'll be the first one to sign it.
So I think what these folks taught us is that we really are in it, and that we really can work things out, and we really can make situations that seem to be untenable something that if everybody gives a little bit and shows a lot of respect, that the resolution is possible.
Excuse me, where's the gate going to be put at?
Off LCA property beyond the end of the line.
I have a map here in case you want to see it.
Mama.
Okay. Yeah.
Mama.
The other Mama.
Top? No.
Very long.
The phone number?
Very, very long.
No. Wait, this is the end of Mama.
You're right.
These are the craters there.
You're mixing up the wrong, you got the wrong gate in mind.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Right now it's private property, that's all we're allowed.
This has nothing to do with the gate, just coming into Leilani, this is going out of Leilani.
Anybody else wants to see?
Several other people agreed to the agreement verbally over the telephone, they're off island, and we'll be getting the agreement to them for actual signature.
I'd just like to say one thing. I really want to give a shout out to our president. That Andy really played an amazing role in terms of bringing these parties together. And I feel it's really good on his appropriate for leadership to really help to rebuild this community where we all want. So thank you.
Yeah.
I think we can use the agreement that was just reached as a template going forward to be able to, attorneys can solve things, but somehow when things get solved by attorneys, they never feel quite right, as opposed to people taking good care of each other, and you can come away from this with a smile on your face. And our goal of this is that after 1 year or 3 months, when these guys all get together, they were banging heads, when they all get together, that it's the beginning of a really wonderful friendship between all of them. Down to a little more, again? Oh, well, I'm just looking at the agenda. Oh, okay, Robert's reminding me that the agenda is supposed to be an item that comes in right now, which is an opportunity for all of you to speak. So we're going to be a little bit more rigorous than we were on Sunday to try to hold it down to 3 minutes. Please respect that. We don't want to have to tell anybody that 3 minutes has gone by. So, and so please try to show respect for that. We'll ask that nobody speak a second time until everybody who wants to speak has had a chance to speak once. And also, if another person has already substantively addressed the point that you want to make, it's perfectly fine to just reference that comment and say, I agree. You don't need to go through the entire thing again. If, on the other hand, that's what you choose to do, so anyone would like to speak first. Go ahead. Oh, and when you stand up, tell us your name, please.
Okay. Should I come up front or?
No.
Okay. That's okay.
Yeah, whatever you want.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
My name is Patty Hazister-Rockus, and I live at the end of South Rubana, the last house on the right, just behind Fisher 8. And yes, I have had several run-ins with visitors and do feel that measures need to be put into place to curb tourist traffic. Tourism is continuing to build and needs to be addressed. Proposals suggested in early April need to be acted on before we completely lose control of the situation. However, there is a bigger issue at hand, at least from my perspective, and something far more concerning. It's our quality of life and our very basic human right to privacy. The quality of life and privacy is seriously in question for anyone living on the fringe of the lava field. Privacy was stripped away from us by the death of our forest, and now also by the 160-foot vantage point called Fisher 8, which is, again, right next to my house. People climbing the fissure is one issue, but a bigger threat to our privacy is actually the use of drones, which is what I'm here to talk about tonight. You see, in recent months, there's been an uptick in drone usage within our community. For the most part, flying a drone over the lava field to gain access to newly formed landscape is a wonderful use of technology. It's when the drones are flown over a neighborhood, over vacant, abandoned, and inhabited lots without discretion that we begin to have an issue. Drones can be heard buzzing overhead during a morning walk, or, as I've had, actually I've had both of these, by a window in my home. During the last encounter, after hearing it from my bathroom, which is on the Fisher side, I ran outside and saw the drone flying through the trees directly at me. So I'm 5'2", so that's pretty low. As soon as it saw me, it elevated itself up to above the tree line, but still kind of damage was done. So yes, it's startling and unnerving. And then, you look, you scan the sky, you see it finally, and you wonder, how close is it? Is it taking pictures of me, my property? Why? Why is it flying over my property? That's what I'd like to know. And then you see it, and it's ruined everything. Your peace of mind, your sanctuary of home, and your faith in humanity. And you wonder, why don't these people understand that even though we've been through all of this, that stealing someone's private property and privacy is wrong and unlawful? Early on, a gentleman actually told my husband, you have no privacy anyway, so why should my drone matter? It matters because, again, I have a basic human right to privacy, especially when I'm in my home and on my property. So this needs to stop. There needs to be a way for us, for me, to exercise our right to privacy and the quiet quality of the life we used to enjoy here in Leilani. Based on my research, there's no specific laws regarding drone operation in a residential area. However, there are a few that apply to this situation and I think can be enforced pretty easily. Number one, a license is required to operate a drone, and the drone needs to be registered with the FAA. Number 2, drone must be kept in line of sight at all times. So in that case, that drone, since it was below the tree line, was definitely not in the line of sight of that operator. Photos taken of people while they feel they're in a private setting, such as a home or property, are considered illegal. And according to the state of Hawaii, drones are not to be flown in disaster areas or in populated areas, over people, or in national parks. So there's some regulation on that already. And most importantly, operators must comply with community guidelines, which means we have the power to control the situation, and should before it gets out of hand. So I have proposed the following for the board's consideration. Number 1, build upon the drone usage regulations and rules already in place through the state of Hawaii and the FAA, and draft a plan for Leilani Estates. Number 2, enforce these rules once they're approved through the use of signage at strategic points and possibly a permit application for lawful use within the community, such as for research or educational purposes. And then number 3, restrict drone usage to over the lava field only. Once it breaks that barrier, we should have the option and authority to ask the operator to cease the flight and leave the area. So, just my personal opinion is I think one of the reasons why we're having such an issue with tourists, and in my case with drones, is that I feel kind of like a shark without teeth. You know, we all know that these rules are in place, but in fact, we can't really enforce them. So the run-ins that I've had usually end in shouting matches because I say you're not supposed to be here, but yes, there's all these reasons why they think that they are allowed to be here. So we need rules and regulations on both of these issues so that we have clear, credible talking points that cannot be argued with. It's a yes or a no answer. You either belong here or you don't. You either have a license and a permit to operate the drone or you don't. It needs to be that black and white. So I feel that by having proper alignment of rules and regulations along with the signage and enforcement by Leilani Estates, neighborhood personnel, as well as homeowners, we can take back our community, the peacefulness of our neighborhood, and privacy and quality of life. Thank you.
Okay, excuse me. Please don't call out to another person when they're reading something. What I said was, I asked people to respect it. I also said that people are going to say what they need to say. That was obviously a very cohesively put together, clearly stated. There was no rambling going on there, so I please keep that kind of editorial comment to yourself.
I have actually the state laws and the FAA for your reference if you'd like a copy.
Yeah, we'd like a copy of that.
You got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any comments they'd like to make? Amazing. Okay.
On her situation with the...
Name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Annette. Annette Nava Paukai, at the end of Paukai. On her situation right there and then with the drone and all of that, who does she call? Does she call you, the president? Right away? Can you guys do something right away?
No.
To address?
No, there's nothing we can do right away.
No?
There's, I think our very statement talked about the absence of public policy. So that's
Okay,
something-
so in other words, the guy is doing his drone and all that. Do we know if he's a resident?
No, we don't, and most likely, well, actually, I've had issues with both non-residents and residents. So the resident we were able to go talk to, and he understood it was his first time using a drone, and he didn't know where it was, yada, yada. But the other person, they claimed that they were standing on the street, so that's public property in his eyes, so it should be perfectly fine. And I said, well, your drone's not on the street, you are on the street, but your drone isn't. And so I think the first point on that is the license and the registration. If I walk up to a drone owner now and I can say, I need to see your license or registration for that drone, and they say, what are you talking about? I don't have it. Then I can actually, I think I might be able to call the FAA. I don't know, I haven't looked into that yet.
Well, that's the situation though, but as a board member, president, whatnot, can we give you guys a call? I mean, we gotta do something as president, board member, but we don't wanna call 911 or police or whatever, right? Right away, we have to do all of that.
The purpose of the board meeting is to collect that kind of information.
Oh, okay, and then come up with a situation to, okay, so then. Yeah, because we had one time, and all my husband said was, get that thing out of here. Boom, 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 they packed up and they're that. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
My thought process is probably,
Say it again.
Steve Sparks, I live in Milwaukee. Yeah, proper signage. We could designate.
You have to have proper signage.
A drone-free area
Read it?
And
And
we've had a scientist from Australia that stayed with us, and he was 3D mapping it, and he was attacked by a resident, coming pretty heavy at him. But to be able to know a procedure where it's put out there that it's going to be happening, and lay that down, but even, helicopters and stuff like that, we already know that to police any of that is really, really hard.
anybody else?
Different matter?
Again?
No, a different matter? Comments on a different matter?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Jeff Billing. I live on South Tacoma Street, Section 2 resident. I want to bring up an issue near and dear to all our hearts was the gate vote. So, the cover letter for the gate vote basically said, we feel that this is the best option to protect our properties and prevent hordes of tourists from getting into subdivisions. That seems to me, it suggests to me that not only was the gate vote a referendum on gates, but also a referendum on controlling tourism. So I would like to ask that the board go back and look at the gate vote and determine if it was a legal vote or not, and then take some action.
Okay. Thanks. Anybody else? Okay, so we'll close the discussion portion, the resident comment portion of the meeting. Thank you all. It's really important that we hear these things, so thank you all for speaking out. Rod's going to give us the treasurer's report.
Basically, I went back to 3 months' worth. Didn't see anything out of the ordinary. It's flipped on. Looks like that's always. I think it's very positive. Still in the plus on the assets. I do have. Understand I'm new at this. There are a few things that I look at, and it takes me a long time to look at in detail. So I've had a lot of people ask me questions. I don't answer the questions. I answer to the board, and the board makes decisions and answers to everybody else. So just be assured, I am looking at it, get ready to go a little bit deeper. Right now, I don't see any big abnormalities. I don't see any problems. But I'm still looking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't you let us get through the agenda? Yes, thank you. The next agenda item is the LCA newsletter. It's for those of you who have either lived for a long time or a short time. You know that we put out a kind of a yellow, goldish colored 4-page newsletter. I've been here 15 years, I guess, or gotten newsletters for 15 years. I'm sure some of you have gotten it longer than that. What I'd like to explore is the possibility of a big transition on the newsletter that would take place over the course of maybe a year or two. I've done some research, and we're about the only community in this area that still prints a newsletter. Everyone else does it with a PDF, and they post things online. And the advantage of that is, first of all, there's virtually no cost involved. Secondly, it can be done in full color but pretty flashy for no cost at all. There are people who still don't have internet access, and but I'll address that in a moment.
Yay.
It's a very interactive way to do a newsletter. It would permit us to, right up until the moment of the newsletter, add letters and add comments and add particular concerns. It would let us, for things like the Hula group or the Bells group or all the other things that meet here in the community center, would give them opportunities to let people know more about what's going on. We could have suggestion columns. We could. One thing that I certainly would like to see removed is I don't see any point in us printing the CCNRs over and over and over and over and over again. I think that the CCNRs are posted on the Leilani Estaes.org website. We can certainly indicate a link of how to go find them. So I propose that we as a board consider the idea of a transitional step to an electronic newsletter. And what the first step would be is a voluntary sign-up for it. We've collected so far about 400 emails from those of you who have asked to have your emails added. And so that's a huge percentage of the community already. And what we would do is we would reach out prior to the publication of the newsletter, and we would ask your permission to change you over to an all electronic, just like your bank did or your credit card company did or lots of other things. And then once you were changed over, you would simply receive an email that says the new newsletter is out. And you could open it either, you could print it, if you have a fancy color printer, you can print it in color. But the point being is that we would transition out of that. The other thing that is not uncommon for organizations like ours all over the world, in the research that I've done, is to do that as a transitional change. But at the end of that transition, actually let people know that there'll be a cost if you want to continue to get a printed document. There's printing costs and there's mailing costs. Our bylaws and 421J has complete accommodation for that. My mind is it would not be a reasonable thing to do on short notice. It wouldn't just be fair to say, next newsletter, too bad, we're going to change. But I'd like to propose to the other board members that we begin that transitional process.
Motion?
Well, why don't we open for discussion first?
No, that's what I said, with this transition, I'm all for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I make a motion that on the very next newsletter, we publish both a printed option and a electronic option. We only print as many as people who don't sign up for the electronic version. We are obligated to get it to everyone, but we'll accept the acknowledgement of an email that's an acceptable form to do it, and I make a motion that we begin that process on the next newsletter. And a show of hands is a vote.
Well, who seconded that?
Okay, so it's passed unanimously. Board of Director training session by the law firm. As Rod said, and I think he spoke for all of us when he said we're new at this, we all thought we knew what we signed up for, but I don't think any of us knew what we signed up for. And for those of you who have served on a board anywhere before, you probably experienced the same thing. There's three kinds of mistakes you can make on a board. The ones that you apologize for, the ones that you get thrown off the board for, and the ones that you go to jail for. And the ones that you go to jail for are very limited and very avoidable. And the ones that you get thrown off the board for are almost as limited and almost as avoidable. But it's been suggested to us by our attorney, Lincoln Ishida, that the board go through a fiduciary responsibility, a governance responsibility, and a clear conflict of interest training. And because those are really the three quicksands that you can get into. By doing that, what we will do as a board is we will know exactly where we can step and where we can't. We know, and we'll also know that we can expand our actions out to the limits of those legal and ethical arrangements, which sometimes I think boards in the past have been a little bit hesitant to move forward with things because they weren't quite sure where their bounds ended and others began. So again, I'll make a motion, and the reason I'm making this a motion is there will be a cost involved. So I make a motion that we begin the process of getting a quote from our attorney for training for fiduciary responsibility, governance training, and conflict of interest education. Second by Robert. Okay, and a show of hands on the vote. Okay, so again, unanimous. Yeah.
Is there an estimate of the cost?
$300 or $400. Yeah. But before we go ahead, we'll get an exact one. Yes.
So are you going to, subsequent to this, put some sort of guideline together so that, and rules and protocols together so that future boards, they can follow those rather than every time have to go through training?
No, those are already in place. On the legislative level, it's mostly a law with a designation of 421J in the state of Hawaii. 421J varied since 1997, has very stringent requirements for a homeowners association as to what they can and can't do and must do. And so one of the things we want to do is to make absolutely certain that we're in compliance with 421J. That's illegal. The second thing is our bylaws, and we're bound by our bylaws. And so, Mark, both of those are already in place.
So I guess what I'm asking then is that every time the board changes, is it going to be necessary to have training again?
Probably. Yeah, it's in my mind that anybody who wants to speak on this, it's penny wise and pound foolish to not do that. We've already spent, and I'm going to spend more money on legal representation, and I don't have any reason to believe that we did, or the board of directors. By the way, when I say we, I mean the board of directors, obviously, not us, not to let these people up here. We're a thing like we're up here. We'll be exploring that, but the goal is not. Maybe I made it sound too much like avoiding trouble. I should say that our goal is to do it correctly, and so that's what I mean. Okay, Robert's Rules. Okay, so another one for me. For those of you who haven't seen Robert's Rules, it's 1,500 pages long. It has more heretofores and where thy lies in it than the dictionary, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. And for example, this meeting tonight has not been conducted by Robert's Rules. However, there's a wonderful portion of Robert's Rules called Robert's Rules for Small Boards. And what Robert's Rules for Small Boards does is suspends nearly all of the cumbersome protocol that's required for a larger board. Small boards is defined as boards with less than 12 members. And it dispenses with nearly all of the very time-consuming process of following Robert's Rules. So we don't really have to agree to do it. We just need to know that we're going to go forward under Robert's Rules for small boards. We're all going to read them and we're all going to become familiar with them. But for example, they dispense with things in many cases for a second, for a vote. They just, if it's already evident that a board is unanimous in a decision, it just ends the discussion. There's no reason to have, if everybody's going to vote yes or no, then why continue a discussion? And it permits that polling to a vote very quickly. So I like it, and I think the other board members will like it because it will make meetings shorter. And the other thing is that we'll be able to follow Robert's Rules to the letter, so to speak, a lot less letters. The next agenda item is signs at the top of Leilani and the LCA sign. That was brought to us by Rich Robbins two or three meetings ago. That there's a whole slew of signs up at the top of Leilani Avenue that aren't pertinent anymore. That they show up too quickly when you make the turn, that people can't read them because they're negotiating the turn and the signs are right there. And then thirdly, he brought up the fact that our Leilani Estates community sign has been completely obscured by vegetation, and the dog leash law as part of that sign has been vandalized and destroyed. So, to the board. Sounds to me like the county signs of the county. And if we're going to do something about it, we better go over that. Because I don't think it's on us to start ripping county signs out of the ground. Any thoughts?
I just think it's just a call we have to have
Yeah.
Or permission to read.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, maybe we could send him a photograph and say, tell us which ones you can take down. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. Lee, you got anything? Okay. Cheryl? Okay.
I just have one more comment. I just found the entrance to Leilani Estates unattractive.
Okay, that's another agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. And then also I propose that we buy a new leash law sign, get it up on our sign, and get permission to cut down the brush that's blocking that sign. And I'm sure Michael could run up there and cut the brush, and I'd be more than happy to order us up a sign. The leash law. I think we said it so far up the road is somebody's private dedication, but yeah, let's find out. Yeah, no, that's all county maintained along there. I don't know what the county's burden is to cut up or in this supposed to cut.
18 feet, I think it is.
Oh, that's definitely on county from there, so we'd be fine with that. Yeah. Okay, so a motion to contact the county about the signage at the top, a motion to clear the vegetation away from the Leilani estate sign, and a motion to purchase a new leash law sign. And a second? Second, and a vote. Okay, unanimous. The next item is Cheryl. Cheryl, why don't you run with it?
Back on the table, there are copies of the committee documents. There's one for the gate committee, one for CC&R committee, and one for a tourism committee. And the gate committee document, as far as I'm concerned, is done. Hopefully all the board members have reviewed it within the last couple of days, and we can vote on whether that committee goes forward or not.
And why don't you explain what a charter is, the same document?
Well, they're charters, they're charters for the committees, and it basically lays out who gets to participate, what the requirements are, what they're supposed to do, what their goals are, how they're supposed to go about them, and once they reach their goals, what happens to the committee. So, for like the gate committee, it's supposed to come up with a period where they investigate solutions to the problem and to the gate. And then once they think they've come up with a good plan, they present it to the board, and the board will vote on the plan. If it needs to, it will go to the membership too. And then after that's done, then they actually have to come up with a plan for how to implement it. And they'll be given a certain amount of time to get it implemented, and then come back to the board. And if everything's all done and taken care of, at that point, the committee is done. It's done its job. So it's basically the same kind of charter for all of the committees that were set up. They're all very similar to that. They just have different goals. So the documents are back there. The gate committee document's pretty much in its final state. I need to make a few changes to the tourism charter as well as the CC&R charter. There was one clause that was in the CC&R charter about allowing the committee access to all the CC&R violation files, and I was really concerned about that because of client-attorney privilege. So I still think we kind of need to talk about that and decide if it's legal or not to let a committee have access to all those records. So that one needs work, and there's also a little work that needs to be done on the tourism one. But I would like to vote on the charter for the gate committee.
So we have that.
Well, the copies are there.
So I'd like to make a comment if I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
About charter.
State your name.
I'm Linda Scalco. I live at the top of Leilani. I am a resident of the Leilani Estates subdivision. It says membership should be drawn from the Leilani Community Association members. I have been trying to volunteer with this committee since I heard that there was a possibility that there was going to be one. I think it's very, 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 very important to have people from the top of the Leilani involved with this committee. Very, very, very important. I don't feel that the interests of all of the residents of this subdivision are going to be represented if there aren't people from what is referred to as Leilani.
Thank you.
This is some elements somewhere. Oh, it's a package, I'm sorry. I don't know if that's one. Okay, thanks. Yeah, we'll address that. So a couple of things so you know about committee charters and forming committees. The purpose of the express purpose of the committee is twofold. Is first to take work away from the board. The board doesn't have to anguish over every single collection of information and knowledge. The second thing is to bring together just more minds and typically people who care about that particular issue are the ones who will sit on the board. Here's what a board can't do. A board can't make any decision that can be implemented. A board can't change anything about the organization. All of that can only be done by the board of directors. So what a board is doing is bringing advisory message to the board of directors, and the board of directors then looks at that advisory. If they need expansion on the advisement, they'll say, why did you arrive at this decision? And then the board will decide to vote up or down on committee recommendations. So the formation of a committee has nothing to do with the decision being made to do or to not do something. So I think that's first of all an important thing. The second thing is a committee is a dynamic organization. The charter outlines, as Cheryl said, certain parameters like the goal. I mean, of course it has to have a goal. And an up and a downside on membership and things like that. But at any given point, if the committee were to come to the board and say, we don't think talking about this is really worth it anymore, we want to enter this and put this new thing into discussion, the board can just simply say, sure, go ahead and explore that too. And again, because nothing the committee doing is binding on the board, nor especially on the community. So if there are little things in these charters that you're finding offense with, keep in mind that none of this is going to create a change in the bylaws, a change in, until such time as a vote is taken on. So, and that's the one you're asking for.
That's one that I'm asking for.
And anybody else wants to read it, the copies over there. So there's only been a motion made to vote on the charter investigation.
Second.
Okay. I'm not. I didn't see it, unfortunately, before tonight. One of the challenges I'm having, I don't know about the other board members, but I've never used Google Docs before. And so I'm getting lost every once in a while finding documents. Cheryl and Robert are whipping me into shape.
Yes,
Yeah, and so some of these things are de facto have to be. For example, minutes will be taken and published. That's actually a requirement for 21J. So that's not just, even though it says it here, there's no wiggle room on that at all. Any discussion? There's Rod? Rod?
Are you proposing that it be...
There's been a motion in a second. And so this would be the time to have discussion about your support or lack thereof.
I mean, just interject, this is an important time. I mean, I've been in several board meetings and the issue of the gate has come up repeatedly. So there's a document in front of you that if anyone has concerns or suggestions.
No concerns or suggestions while we're in this part.
Yeah.
And we're voting on this particular topic.
Right, but it's time for people to voice, what their thoughts are.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, can we make a comment or not?
This is this Robert's Rules. Small board.
Okay.
Let's ask the board. Are you guys okay with some comments at this point?
I mean, if we're voting specifically on this, I'd rather make your comments, but I'm just
Yeah, that's what I'd say too. But again, a board charter can be changed as fast as it can be created. It doesn't go into the bylaws, it isn't a legal document in the sense that it's binding anyone. It's just simply a set of guidelines, other than as it applies to 421J or any other legislation.
So could I just make a comment about the intent then? That if it's so easy to change, why does it say that only LCA members are allowed?
Well, ultimately, this organization is the LCA. This is an LCA meeting. Hang on. This is an LCA meeting. This is the Leilani Community Association. The board certainly could solicit the opinions and the feelings and the guidance of folks in Upper Leilani. But as far as, well, anyway, you know what? The charter's been proposed, and so I think his point is taken. I think that we should vote up or down on this charter as written, and then we'll go from there. So there's been a motion and a second. So whoever made the motion would like to call for a vote.
Yes, I'd like to call for a vote to approve the charter for the gate committee.
Okay, show of
All
hands.
approved?
Okay, so that passes unanimously.
business for allowing me to get done.
Okay, so that passes unanimously. With that said, any comments about this as to things that you want the committee to consider will be welcome, but even more important, volunteers will be welcome. So if you really have a strong feeling about it, or even you have a sense of community duty, you feel like serving on a committee is an important thing to do, we're going to need people. How many people did we call for? 6 to 8. So let's not re-implement the draft. Okay, the next agenda item is LCA facilities. And I'll read it first. Inspection for safety, cleanliness, maintenance report, and required safety changes for the pavilion. I have a handout for that for the board. Here you go. And Robert and Cheryl and for myself. So I'll kind of start, and then I'm going to hand it over to Rod. Rod and I met here, what was that, a couple of weeks ago? About a week ago. Yeah, time flies when you're getting old. And we did a really exhaustive walk around, probably more than 2 hours. And we walked around the grounds here and pretty ruthlessly looked at the way things were and thought about the way things should be, and tried to think about which things are issues of safety, which things are issues of aesthetics, which things are issues of maintenance, and Rod and I put together a whole list of those items. They're listed simply in the order that we came up with them. There's no particular order on this other than I moved 2 things to the top. And Rod worked out an estimate on some of this, and I worked out an estimate. I will say the estimate that Rod did was done quite exhaustively and quite carefully. I did what's known as SWAG estimating, which means that you shoot a number at it and hope that you're in the right area. Obviously, before we went ahead with any of this, we would get the correct procedure for getting bids and meet all the requirements that needed to be done. And then we also, I know I'm speaking for both of us, so misspeak, we definitely felt there was a sense of priority in these things. Some of them were really consequential, and others were just simply, we need to get to it. But it's okay, I just go down the list. It's a long list. Yeah, it's a long list. I'll go fast. The number one thing with 2 stars on it we felt was we need to contact our insurance company and find out which of these things are covered by our insurance. And we're not sure that was really done as well as it needs to be done. So I know Rod has taken on that project, and that's fabulous. The other thing that we were very concerned about, and I don't want to make this more than it should, We actually both felt that the pavilion needs safety inspection. There's a lot of rust in it, and our concern is that we want someone who's an expert, an engineer or someone like that, to look at the bolts that hold the pavilion to the concrete and the entire framing of the pavilion, and make us feel confident that we don't have something over there that needs more work than we're afraid it does. So, yeah, and you're right, it's a long list. Rod and I both felt that there was a lot of power washing that needs to be done. The eruption and subsequent time has passed as things have gotten pretty dirty. We painted the parking lines and the stops, some painting on doors. The metal handrails outside here, there's actually breaks in them, and so there's a safety danger involved. There's a broken sink in one of the bathrooms. The wallboard in the bathrooms is pretty shabby. We talked about, is it wise to have outside security cameras? We've had some things stolen in years past, and maybe that would help it up. Anyway, I agree with you, Rod. This is a long list. But Robert's going to post it on the minutes after the meeting, and so if any of you have feedback on any of this, that you either feel money well spent, or it's money spent foolishly, or it's or other things that you think need to be done, we need to know about it. The ballpark, and boy, is this ever a ballpark, estimate that I came up with to do everything on this list is something less than $25,000. It ties into what Rod said before about finances, that we need to assess the finances, but some of these things, I think, we can't turn our backs on. So, I'm not sure motion is required. What do you think? I think it's just informational.
Just a point of the goal, just so I can walk around and
That's his idea, not mine, but
I just thought wearing the better, do different ideas. We can take the dog and put him off leash. And we can meter the dogs, good dog hours, big dog hours. Just no matter how much room we have down by the clippers.
I did, what we're talking about is having an off-leash dog park towards the back of the area. And I did think about the fact that for many folks, especially if they get a little older, they like their dog better than they like their kids. So building that relationship with dogs is really important for some people. So I think
And you can't leave your kids in the dog park.
but if you do, you can clean up after it.
Obviously, some of the items on here require professionals to do.
Yeah, well, yeah, good one.
And I'd like to see if a lot of these items we would find volunteers in the community. It's a general rule, if you're getting on a ladder and you take somebody off the ground, we don't do that. That's just something I've always been in the industry. Make it professional. But if it's like painting the post out here, somebody volunteers with this free today, we pay them up. So of course we would provide the product. It just helps when people volunteer, they have a sense of ownership.
Yeah, the other thing that Rod and I discussed was going forward, we would be very scrupulous about requiring contractors who come in to be licensed and insured and provide all the proper documentation to completely avoid, as completely as possible, to avoid any liability on the part of LCA. So that kind of falls up the roof on the ladder. Okay, so, yeah.
You said like particular items, number one, when they get done, right?
No timeline whatsoever has been talked about at all. But Rod, I found out by walking around with Rod, he knows a great deal about doing this stuff. And so, as long as it's all right with you, I'll volunteer you and me to kind of keep going the report on it. Okay? Okay. The phrase "I'll volunteer you" is a very okay. Okay. So the next item is communications with residents with inaccessible homes on Copperhead Street. Robert, I know you had something on that. My name's on it. I'm not quite sure.
Well, just that
home and my name's on it.
Nicolette, his name Steve Siskiyou, is that his, I think it's, yeah, Steve Siskiyou. And if you know,
Actually, Steve Clapper.
oh, Steve, oh, okay.
That's the day of the week.
No, there is a Steve Siskiyou who,
And that is, that's the same person.
Yeah.
This is the Clapper, the same person.
oh,
Cisco is online, and
right. I just got communication from him that he wants clarity in terms of distinguishing between Kibuka, it's not Japanese, Kibuka off Alakai and the one off Muhammad. And so he just wants to make sure it's clear that, you know, what Kibuka we are talking about.
As you heard, the agreement that, and going back to the agreement that those folks signed at the very start, the reason LCA had to be involved in that is because there was 130 feet of Balama Street that was covered. And that's our bailiwick, so we had to address that. There's a couple of miles of off LCA property. Does anybody, do you know how long the road is for Mac? Do you know how long the whole road is going to be covered?
Well, the portion that would affect or be part of the Kabukai is 1,900 feet. The total distance is less than a mile.
Okay, so, but the point being is that the big difference is who's footing the bill. The folks who live beyond there are paying entirely to go across land that is not LCA land.
So I did get a call from Smiley Burrows, I think most of you know Smiley, and Robin, did she call you? I gave her your phone number for your head of roads. So she's very interested in the Kibuka that's off Kahukai and trying to get funding from the county to pay for access to those houses.
Okay. So previously, the board, this board in fact, voted by a motion that at this time we would not make the expenditure to open Kabukai Street to 5 or 6 homes that are beyond that. The estimates that we were getting, they were very rough estimates. We're in the $50,000 to $75,000 range. And subsequent to that decision, we also made a decision to create a task force to explore government funding. So both of those mechanisms are already in place.
Yeah.
So I would prefer Smiley talk to our task force.
Well, so I gave,
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's great. However, I think that what's being asked about this is not funding, it's asked for being, it simply says communications. So, would you guys feel comfortable if we put the decisions that are made up until now in writing, since they're voted on decisions by the board, and we would send it out to the affected parties, we would tell them about the vote to not fund it this time, but also about the vote to actively and aggressively pursue government assistance in getting that road cut.
14 minutes.
Okay, fair enough. I just thought it might be
I don't think that stops you from just communicating.
well, we can't, I can't do it, but the board can do it. We have to vote on it. Yeah, point taken, it's already in the minutes. Okay.
What I'm hearing from the residents is one story about how you can or can't come in Kabukai, another story about another direction. They're very concerned about the differing stories and the differing dollar amounts. We don't actually have solid quotes.
No, we do have a vote to not spend that money.
Yes.
And as of right now, that vote is without regard to
And then there's going to be concern about why you don't spend money and justify doing or not doing it.
Yeah, we are acting, yeah, you know what, that's actually not the subject at hand. What we should do, and I agree with you, we should on future agenda put a revisiting of that, exactly what you just said. But based on this agenda item, I agree with Lee. Why don't we just put together a well-crafted email to those folks and make them just restate the decisions that have already been made. Just have them do that. Yeah. That leads nearly perfectly, the best segue I've seen in a long time, to the roads and disaster funding update. So again, very quickly, what Robin Stetson, Cheryl Cow, and Jay Travasky have been working together as a task force. Task force is simply a de facto coming together. There's no sanctions, and what they're doing is they've been collecting information, and then they have taken one quite, what I consider very important and wonderful action. Robin's going to give us an update on that.
And so we, at last Sunday's board meeting, just a few days ago, we brought a letter for the board's approval, directed to our government representatives and asking them directly for their help in helping Leilani secure recovery monies. The board approved the letter. It was out the door Tuesday morning, and it should be sitting in front of a lot of our representatives right now for their aides. We mailed 20 letters in total. These went out to various federal, state, and county officials. In fact, here I have a list. I can read out a few of them for you. Went to Senator Mazie Guarno, Senator Brian Schatz, Representative Tulsi Gabbard, Governor David Egan, his assistant, Brigadier General Kenneth Hara, who's with the Hawaii National Guard, Senator Russell Luderman, Representative San Buenaventura. Then we got into the county, key persons in the county, starting with Mayor Kim and on down. Now we see who responds. As a reminder, our task force goal is to secure LCA's fair portion of the considerable recovery monies that are coming into the county. The published amount in the sort of general fund that would be available to us is $107 million, but that's just the published. By published, I mean it's in the papers, it's in the media, it's broadcast. But I have heard there are more millions coming in. That's still to be seen, but we'll keep you posted.
Did you see 107 or 170?
What's that?
170 or 107?
107, yeah. But anyway, hold that thought, along with the board and the task force, let's make it happen. I think it's possible.
So a big thanks to the task force.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Robin and Cheryl and I and Jay have talked a little bit about it, and what we found worked really well with the what was called the transparency letter. Some of you remember it when we were under curfew, and we reached out to 23 people very similarly. What we found was that 19 of them didn't respond, and 4 of them got the job done. And you never know who those 4 are going to be. And so I know I said it at the last board meeting, but my wish is that at the next Democratic debate, that Tulsi Gabbard get up and one of her bragging points is, and I'm the one who secured the recovery funding for Leilani Estates. I'm sorry. Yeah. So there's one agenda item that didn't get onto the agenda. Greg Armstrong reminded me of it. We got a request from the University of Minnesota to send back 3 people. They've been here once before. They're biologists apparently, and they came here to study a real honest-to-goodness critter called the lava cricket. And they already came once and did a whole study on it. They want to come back for a follow-up study, so the motion is before the board that we do grant for this educational endeavor the right for them to come in on the caveat that any private property that they're going to go onto, that they absolutely correctly secure the right to do that before they go out onto any private property. So I make a motion that we grant that permission given that condition. Okay, second from Ron, and I vote. Okay, so the last agenda item on the open agenda, there is going to be an executive session following this. As a reminder, what executive sessions are for is items that are subject to attorney-client privilege, items that involve personnel, and items that involve intra-board privacy issues. And those are the only things that the executive session can be called for. So our last agenda item is Robert, who has wanted to, well, why don't you just go?
Right, so, from the very beginning, before I was even elected to board director, I thought, why doesn't this organization have an executive director? I'm used to working, I've been involved with non-profit organizations much of my life, and there's always an executive director who's responsible for running an organization. And this is no small mom and pop organization, as you're all well aware of. And it's sort of interesting that the original founders of Leilani had some big plans. We were supposed to have a swimming pool, we were supposed to have a golf course, we were supposed to have tennis courts, etc. And since I'm on the board now, and I see what we're doing as a board, there's just no way I believe this is going to happen. Those kind of quote-unquote big plans. Yes, we can muddle along, and I'm using that word purposefully. We can muddle along, okay, and we're doing the best job we can. But I really believe, we are a vibrant community. We want to rebuild. And I really believe one thing I want to look into is the possibility, again, of hiring an executive director who will really run the organization. And I just would like to do some comparative research. I'd like to get a task force together, asking for a motion from the approval on the board, if we create a task force, just to inquire on what other homeowners associations in Hawaii and the mainland, what percentage of them have executive directors? What do they do? And so we can make the best informed decision, what is best for the future of Leilani. Because right now, we are ignorant. And I don't like being ignorant. So my motion is to form a task force of people. I will serve on that task force because I have a vested interest in it, and also people from the community here who want to work together, do some research, and come back with a proposal for the board.
So with initial stated that I probably don't think it's the right time for it, I will absolutely make a motion to support the creation of the task force.
What does the RG stand for?
Robert Golden.
Oh!
It's a minor.
I racked my brain.
That's okay.
Secret code.
World office.
Damn it, they cracked our code. And so a motion and a second for the creation of a task force to do a cost-benefit analysis of the creation of an executive director position for the LCA. A vote.
I'm 110% against it, but just for a task force, I'll vote yes.
Very good. Right.
Task force, yes.
And I made the motion, and you made the second.
okay.
Yeah, so it's a unanimous decision to go ahead with that. I skipped an agenda item, but Rob caught me on that. we actually never gave a formal endorsement of the Road and Disaster Funding Task Force. It's very different from approving a charter. A task force can do almost anything it wants. It doesn't have to report back to the board on a regular, any formal structure. It doesn't have to keep minutes. It's not subject to Robert's Rules or the 421J. And all that they're doing is going out and collecting information. The task force did, however, bring a motion to us to send that letter. And so once they acted on that, we should have first formally created the task force. We had a little bit of the cart before the horse.
I was just going to ask if you would consider calling it road recovery funding instead of road disaster funding. What do you think of that?
Well, I think you're parsing the words wrong. Road and disaster funding. What we're going after is disaster funding. That's how the money's coming to Hawaii. It's called disaster funding. So it means we're...
Well, it's also called recovery funding.
Oh. Well...
But if you think that's just stronger, I'm not that hung up on it.
Why don't we create it as written, and then you guys, if you're uncomfortable with that, we'll change it at some point in the future. But right now, yeah, there's already a lot of work been done under that name, so let's just, what that will do is it will retroactively sanction the work that's been done up until now, without saying, oh, you voted for one thing, but this other group is...
Well, when we first started though, we were just calling it road funding. We didn't want to call it road disaster.
So, so we got a motion in a second, and a vote to sanction the task force. Okay, unanimous. So, did we actually just make it to a meeting with every vote unanimous?
Yes.
Something's wrong. Okay, so that ends the open portion of the meeting.